They forgot me when the real baby was born, and they told me I was just a practice run for being real parents. At 15, I've spent more time sleeping on friends' couches than in my own bed. My parents had me young and never let me forget it. But now that they've got their real kid, I'm just the unpaid babysitter. When they asked me to care for my little sister so they could try for another baby, I finally snapped. I'm not their second chance. I'm their forgotten one. At 15, that sentence keeps echoing in my head, louder than the silence I've lived in most of my life. My parents had me when they were barely adults themselves, 18 and 19, just kids playing house with a real child in their arms. I was never what they wanted. I was what happened, an accident, a responsibility, a burden they carried more out of obligation than love. Growing up in that house, it always felt like I was intruding. The air was heavy, full of things left unsaid. My mom never looked at me the way she looked at herself in the mirror. And my dad? He didn't really look at me at all. They didn't hit me. They didn't scream. That might have been easier, honestly. But they ignored me, and that kind of hurt seeps in slowly, like water through cracks in a wall. You don't even realize it's breaking you until you're already crumbling. They never helped me with homework, never showed up for school plays or conferences. I used to watch the other kids' parents cheer in the crowd and wonder what that felt like, to be wanted there. I'd take home permission slips or notes that needed a signature, and they'd sit on the counter for days. I had to practically corner them to get a scrawl on the line, and even then, they'd sigh like I was interrupting something important. Birthdays were the worst. Every year I'd hope maybe this time it would matter. Maybe they'd bake a cake. Maybe they'd remember without me saying anything. But it always passed like a Tuesday, just another day. Meanwhile, their wedding anniversary, full-blown celebration, fancy dinner, music, even matching outfits. I'd sit in my room and listen through the wall. After a while, I stopped expecting anything, stopped asking. Instead, I started spending more and more time at my friends' houses. Places that smelled like cookies, where moms asked how your day was, and dads gave awkward but sincere fist bumps. Places that felt warm, safe, like a home should feel. I never overstayed, just long enough to breathe. My parents never asked where I was, never checked in. I could have been missing for hours, and they wouldn't have noticed. Sometimes I wondered if they'd even realize if I just didn't come back at all. There's no extended family to run to either. My grandparents disowned my parents when they had me. I guess they saw the train wreck coming. I was never invited into that world, just a shadow tied to their shame. But I didn't hate my parents. Not at first. I just wanted them to see me, to try, to act like I mattered. Now I know better. Some people aren't meant to be parents. Some people think having a child will make them grow up or bring them closer. But all it really does is shine a light on everything they haven't healed. I was that light, and they spent years trying to dim it. And still, I stayed quiet. I accepted the scraps of attention. I built my own self-worth from the ground up. I told myself that maybe one day they'd wake up and realize I was worth something. But then came the baby. And suddenly it was clear. They didn't forget how to love. They just never wanted to love me. It started with a smile I'd never seen before. 2 years ago, they sat me down on the couch. Same couch where I used to sit alone doing homework. Same couch where birthdays went unspoken. And told me they were expecting another baby. My mom was glowing. My dad had this proud, boyish grin, like he'd just won the lottery. I was stunned. Not because they were having another kid, that was shocking, sure, but because of how excited they looked. Excited in a way I had never seen when it came to me. I sat there, nodding, pretending I didn't feel like the floor had just opened beneath me. I even managed a small smile, but inside, I was unraveling. Then came the jokes. "You were our little practice run," they laughed. "This time we're really ready to be parents." And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just the first child. I was the mistake they had been trying to forget. At first, I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe they were just nervous or trying to lighten the mood. But the months that followed only confirmed the truth. This baby wasn't just a second child. She was their do-over. And I wasn't part of the plan. The pregnancy became their whole world. Baby names, nursery colors, photo shoots, baby shower, registry. All things I never had. They didn't even talk to me about it unless it involved something they wanted me to help with. Cleaning, watching the house, staying out of the way. And then she was born. I thought I was prepared. I really did. But nothing could have prepared me for how invisible I'd become. They doted on her. Every coo, every stretch, every diaper change was magic in their eyes. I remember getting sick at school not long after. The kind of sick where your head spins and your stomach won't stop turning. The nurse called them 3 times. No answer. When I finally walked home, pale and dizzy, I found a note on the fridge. Out for a family day, phones off. Family day. And I wasn't even part of it. That night, I didn't cry. I wish I had. I think crying would have felt more human. Instead, I just laid in bed, staring at the ceiling and thought, so this is what it feels like to be officially replaced. From that moment on, I stopped trying. No more small talk. No more pretending. I came and went as I pleased. I was polite, sure. But I stopped looking for their eyes to meet mine. Because I knew they wouldn't. And in their new world of bedtime stories and baby giggles, I was just background noise. A memory they barely remembered. They didn't even ask. It was a Saturday morning. I was halfway through a cold bowl of cereal when my mom dropped a neatly folded piece of paper on the table in front of me. A schedule, color-coded, bulleted, highlighted, feeding times, nap windows, emergency contacts. All for my baby sister. I stared at it, confused. We've started fertility treatments, Mom said, with that same glowing face she used to wear only for the baby. And we'll need someone to watch her for a few hours each week while we're at the clinic. She said it like it was obvious, like it was expected. My dad leaned against the counter, coffee in hand, smiling like they'd just asked me to water the plants. You're great with her, he added. And it's just a few hours a week, not a big deal. I said nothing at first. I just stared at the paper, at the tiny checklist of responsibilities they had casually handed off to their 15-year-old daughter. A daughter they barely acknowledged until it was convenient, until they needed something. They waited. When I looked up, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said the words I'd been choking on for months. She's not my kid. My mom blinked, confused. My dad tilted his head. You had her, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Not me. I didn't choose this. You did, so you take care of her. There was a long pause. One of those silences that's so thick it hums in your ears. Then my dad's smile faded. You're being dramatic, he muttered. It's just a little help. You act like we're asking you to raise her. That's when something inside me cracked. No, I said. You are asking me to raise her. You're already halfway out the door. You didn't raise me, and now you're expecting me to step in for a child you actually love? His face darkened. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. That was it. I laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh that didn't sound like it belonged to me. What exactly did you do for me? I asked. Ignore me? Forget my birthdays? Make me feel like a mistake you had to live with? Mom flinched. Dad went quiet, and I didn't wait for an answer. I stood up, pushed the schedule back toward them, and walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just left the room because I knew they wouldn't hear me, no matter how loud I got. And in that moment, something shifted. For the first time, I stopped hoping they'd change. I stopped pretending that if I just waited long enough, they'd come around and see me. They didn't want to see me. They wanted me to disappear until they needed me again. But this time, I wouldn't be there. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought saying no, finally saying no, would be enough to make them realize just how far they'd pushed me. That maybe, for once, they'd stop and ask themselves why their own daughter didn't want to be part of their lives. But no. A few days later, my dad knocked on my bedroom door like nothing had happened. He walked in without waiting for an answer, typical, and sat down on the edge of my bed with this heavy sigh, like he was the one carrying all the weight. "You're being unfair," he said. "I didn't look up from my homework. You live in this house. You eat our food. You use our electricity. The least you can do is give back a little." I closed my notebook. "Give back," I repeated. "Give what back?" He stared at me. "We raised you." I laughed again. I'd been doing that a lot lately, laughing in that empty, tired way when words don't quite reach the pain underneath. "You didn't raise me," I said, calm but cold. "You had me, and then you spent the next 15 years pretending I wasn't there." His jaw tightened. "Watch your tone." But I was done watching anything, especially my words. "You're not asking me for help. You're asking me to clean up the life you actually care about now, and I won't do it. She's your daughter, not mine. You want to play house again? You do it yourselves." That's when Mom came in, silent, pale, like she'd been listening behind the door. She didn't yell. She didn't even defend herself. She just looked at me, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "You don't mean that," she said softly. And for a split second, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered every parent-teacher night they missed. Every birthday that passed like an ordinary Tuesday. Every time I was sick, sad, or scared, and alone. "I do," I said. I meant it. That night, I wrote them a message. Too long to say out loud, too much to hold in. I told them I was tired. Tired of feeling like a backup plan, a placeholder. Tired of being expected to carry the weight of a family that never once carried me. I ended it with this: "I'm not your babysitter. I'm not your redemption story. I'm not your second chance at getting it right. I'm just your first child. And apparently, that was never enough for you." I hit send. And then I put my phone on silent, turned off the lights, and laid in the dark. For the first time, I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just done. Done hoping, done waiting, done wishing they'd become the parents I'd always needed. They chose their version of family. And now, I was choosing myself. I thought there would be more noise, more yelling, more guilt. But after I sent that message, the house went eerily quiet. Not a word, not a knock. Just silence. And maybe that was the loudest answer of all. For the next few days, we moved around each other like strangers in the same space. My dad didn't say good morning. My mom didn't ask how school was. Not that she ever really had, but now the absence was deliberate. Like they were punishing me with distance, forgetting that distance was all I'd ever known from them. And honestly, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Something inside me had already shifted. The part of me that used to ache for their approval, that used to crave even the smallest scrap of attention, it had gone quiet. Tired, maybe. Or finally at peace. They had made their choice. Not just once, but over and over again. They chose silence over presence. They chose the easy child over the inconvenient one. And now they were choosing to let me slip away again. This time for good. One night, I passed by their bedroom door. It was cracked open. I heard them talking in hushed voices, the way people do when they're pretending not to be overheard. I caught pieces of sentences. "She's being selfish. She'll understand when she's older. We did our best." I didn't stop walking, because I knew better now. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about the version of me they'd created, the ungrateful child in their heads, the one who ruined their early years, the one who never appreciated them. That imaginary version of me was easier to hate, easier to dismiss, easier to live with. The real me, the quiet kid who used to cry herself to sleep on birthdays, the one who clung to school counselors and friends' moms just to feel seen, that girl, they never even tried to know her. And maybe they never will. But here's the thing. I'm done chasing love from people who only know how to run from responsibility. I'm done filling in the blanks for the parents who were supposed to write the story with me. They chose to start over. So now, so do I. I'm not saying it's easy. There are moments when the weight of it all sits heavy on my chest, like when I see other teens laughing with their parents, or when I have to sign my own permission slips because no one else will. There are nights when I still wonder, what if I had been easier to love? What if I had been enough? But then I remind myself, this isn't about what I lacked. It's about what they refused to give. And I won't carry their failure like it's my shame. From now on, I make the rules. I'll build a future where I don't have to shrink myself to fit someone else's version of love, where I get to choose who stays, who matters, and who deserves access to my heart. They had the chance to be part of that story, but they walked away from it again and again. So this time, I'm the one closing the door, and I'm not looking back.